Hi, everyone, and welcome to From Pain Point to On Point, transforming sales challenges into wins with gamification. This is the podcast where we dive deep into the common challenges faced by sales managers and explore innovative gamification solutions to overcome them. I'm your host and SalesScreen go-to-market director, Britt, and every 2 weeks, we'll bring you expert insights, real-world stories, and actionable tips to help you turn your sales pain points into on-point victories. This is our first episode of this podcast series, which is really exciting, but also a little nerve-wracking. But I want to spend this first episode talking to you about gamification. I think this is a buzzword that we hear a lot. We've heard a lot all over LinkedIn. It's definitely a vertical that's becoming more popular. But for sales managers, you guys know about gamification because you've been using gamification for years in some form or another. But at SalesScreen, we've dedicated our entire platform to gamification. So we've got some insights, we've got some knowledge, we've got some tips for you guys, and we want to spend this podcast helping you figure out how to turbocharge your sales team to get the most engagement and the best performance that you possibly can get. So to start, we're going to dive right in and we are going to talk about what gamification is, why it's important, why you need to use it, and give you guys some tips and give you guys some insights. So we're going to start with the basics. What the hell is gamification anyway? Like I said, you've probably heard this term thrown around all the time. It's definitely a buzzword on LinkedIn these days. But gamification, in its base definition, is the process of applying game design elements like points, levels, rewards, etc., to non-game context. So it's about taking those mechanics that make games so engaging and applying them to tasks that might otherwise feel really routine or super tedious. So imagine turning your sales targets into levels that you need to beat, or the deals that you close into points that you need to score, or cold calls into head to head battles that you can win. So gamification adds this layer of challenge and excitement and fun to your work. And it's not always about making work fun or enjoyable, which it is. I mean, we know this, right? We know that if people like what they do, if they enjoy their teammate, that they, if they like the people that they work with, if they like the work that they do, you're going to get better performance and engagement from them in general. But really, what gamification is tapping into is motivation. And motivation is the key to success. And you can always find a way to motivate someone, right? We as humans are motivated by all sorts of different things. If you can find the thing that motivates one person, it doesn't matter how tedious the job is. It doesn't matter if they're on phones all day long cold calling people. You can find someone or find something that will motivate that person to want to do that every day. So that's why this is such a powerful tool, because it kind of transcends the desire to do a job and it really taps into this deeper, more primal instinct that we all have. So how does it work? How does that all work? The first thing is that gamification, it taps into our natural desires to achieve, to compete, and also to socialize. This is a huge element that we find here at SalesScreen. We find this part missing from a lot of sales teams that we talk to, which is the social element. The socialization element of gamification is massive. The socialization element of motivation is massive. This is such an untapped secret sauce, secret weapon. And if you can tap into that and create this social element around gamification, you are really going to get some high performing salespeople on your team. It's incredibly powerful in a sales environment. It's incredibly powerful everywhere, but especially in a sales environment. So to really understand why this is so effective, we're going to dive into the psychology behind motivation. Motivation really is the driving force behind everything that we do. And in psychology, it's broken down into two types: intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. So intrinsic motivation, as you can imagine, as the name implies, it comes from within. It's the drive to do something because you find it personally rewarding. So that's the satisfaction that you get from learning a new skill or completing a really challenging project or just doing something that you love, like a hobby. When you are intrinsically motivated, the activity that you're doing is the reward, right? So if you're a salesperson that just loves to sell, that's the reward. The reward is what you're doing as your job. But if you're somebody that's kind of fallen into sales, maybe, as we know a lot of people fall into sales sometimes, then maybe the job itself is not that exciting for you, but there can be other elements that make it really exciting for you. And that's where extrinsic motivation comes in. Extrinsic motivation comes from external factors. So it's the drive to do something because of external rewards or even pressure, like earning a bonus or commission at work, or receiving praise from your coworkers or from your manager, or even avoiding punishment because external factors, external motivating factors can be negative as well. And so that extrinsic motivation can become incredibly effective, especially in the short term, but it's a little less sustainable than intrinsic motivation because once that reward or the pressure is removed, then the motivation starts to fade, right? So the thing that makes gamification really powerful is that it taps into both of these types of motivation. It makes tasks inherently enjoyable and engaging, tapping into the or intrinsic motivation. And it also offers external rewards that appeal to our extrinsic motivation. And the real key, and I think the thing that sales managers can often struggle with, is finding that balance, the balance between the two. So let's just say you're a salesperson and you love closing a deal, like I said. That is intrinsic motivation. You're intrinsically motivated to go out and to sell and to make the calls and to book the meetings and all of those things. But if on top of doing that and enjoying that, you could also earn points for the deals that you close, you could climb the top of a leaderboard and be on top of a leaderboard. You could be getting public shout outs from your peers or from your managers. That then taps into extrinsic motivation, and that creates a really powerful combination that can allow managers to create sustained engagement and performance on their teams. Now, we could break down motivation into even smaller slices because there are other elements of motivation styles: mastery, autonomy, achieving, and social. Those are like four other more granular styles of motivation. But at SalesScreen, we like to talk about Bartle players. So Bartle players it was initially created by Richard Bartle. I believe he did this in the 90s. And it is a way to classify and categorize different types of online gamers and kind of bucket them into their gaming style. We really like this. We feel like this translates really well to salespeople and also just generally to the sales process. So that's what we use. We like to use Bartle Player Types. It's also just kind of fun to like consider what you are and your type and your style. So the four types for Bartle players are killers, achievers, explorers, and socializers. So killers are kind of exactly what you would expect. They're kind of like the Glengarry, Glen Rosses of the world. They are always striving to be number one. They are super competitive, always gunning for the top spot. They want to win every single deal. They want to win every single battle. They're like sharks with the blood in the water. They are constantly trying to outperform everybody around them. And they are motivated by the thrill of competition and to be the best. So those are our killers. And when you think about killers, you are thinking about kind of just like your stereotypical salesperson, right? I think something that we find at SalesScreen when we're talking to sales managers is that a lot of sales managers are killers because usually in these types of scenarios, when you're getting promoted because you're consistently performing, you're hitting your targets, you're going above and beyond, you know your market better than anybody. You have a lot of reasons why you're getting the top spots all the time. And so sales managers are usually killers. That can be a great thing, but it can also mean that the view of their team can be a little narrowed because what we find is that the majority of teams are made up of socializers. So, socializers are your team players. They're the ones that really thrive on interaction with other teammates and collaboration. They love team competitions. They're the glue that holds your team together. And gamification really engages them because it fosters a sense of community, a sense of shared wins or shared losses. And they're really motivated by the relationships that they're building and the recognition that they receive from their peers. It doesn't mean that they don't want to win. It doesn't mean that they don't want to close deals. It doesn't mean that they don't want to be on the top of the leaderboard. It just means that's not necessarily their number one priority when they wake up in the morning. They're much more engaged by having this team dynamic, which on a sales team can be kind of hard to build because it's a little bit isolated sometimes. And then also, it can very easily turn into negative competition, right? It can get a little toxic sometimes if you're not paying attention. So the next group we have are achievers. So achievers, they're very goal oriented. They really like hitting milestones. So think of milestones like long-term goals as opposed to those short-term constantly winning the competition. Gamification for them is a little bit like candy. It's a little bit like a sugar rush, right? Like they crave the achievements, they crave earning the badges, getting the streaks, the you did it, you hit it. They're driven by this sense of progress and they are constantly looking to improve and succeed. And then lastly, we have explorers. And explorers, these are a really interesting group. They're really curious. They're the ones that they're always looking for new strategies. These are the people on your team where when you're like, okay, guys, we're going to go after X, Y, and Z, they're going after prospect A, or they're like, we're going to break into an entirely new vertical, or they're always trying new out of the box ways to get in touch with people, right? Like always trying to come up with something interesting and new and different and always trying to like discover something that other people haven't done yet that's going to unlock a code, crack a code, if you will. Gamification is really for them all about exploration and finding new and really innovative ways to achieve their goals. So the thing that we find like kind of fascinating is that these Bartle player types, which are not based on motivation at all. They were not based on motivation. It was based purely on gaming styles. That's where it came from. But it really does align very well with the different types of motivation types that I talked about earlier, autonomy, mastery. They really tie in super well together. So it works so great as a framework for us. And again, it just makes it a little bit easier to apply to your team, I think. So I think that the best thing a sales manager can do, and again, we're going to talk about this as our podcast goes on, is really taking the time to understand your team's player types and the different types of motivating factors that can help you develop and tailor a gamification strategy that allows you to engage everyone effectively. And to be clear, you don't need a gamification platform for this. I mean, it does make it a lot easier, but you can do this as a sales manager just on your own, thinking about ways that you can implement some of these gamification tactics and techniques onto into your team. And you can do that without the help of any sort of gamification platform. We do make it a lot easier for you, but you can do it on your own. This is stuff that you can like take right now and implement on your team right now. So you could be thinking, this is great. This all sounds great, Britt. This all sounds like really impressive stuff. It seems like you guys have really done your research. Seems like you guys have really put in the time. But how do we know that gamification even really works? Like in theory, sounds good, but how do we know? And that's a fair question. I think we definitely know that gamification works within a sales environment because sales teams have been running competitions for eons since the dawn of time. But we also know that gamification is literally everywhere. Gamification techniques are used everywhere, and you don't even know that it's happening. Gamification is used on your Starbucks rewards card. When they're like, buy 5 drinks this month, get a free Frappuccino. That's gamification. They are incentivizing you to hit a milestone and rewarding you with something once you do that. Your fitness apps, I mean, Peloton. Peloton is the master of gamification, right? I think that Peloton actually was one of the bigger catalysts, one of the companies that really brought gamification to the public sphere and into the forefront of all of our minds because they just did it so well. We do this with all sorts of other apps like Duolingo. Duolingo is a great one. Duolingo is, it's rewarding you for maintaining streaks. It's rewarding you for consistently practicing. You're getting points, you get little games. It's a great example of a gamified process. And then even, obviously like a very, very obvious one that we've kind of been experiencing for a long time now, which is just social media, right? Social media, Instagram, getting likes, getting comments. That is a form of gamification, right? You're putting something out there and you're hoping people will engage with it. And when you get that like or when you get that comment, you get a little dopamine hit that makes you want to do it more. It is all gamified stuff. So it's everywhere. Gamification is in our everyday all the time without us even realizing that we're being gamified. So it just makes sense to use these tactics that major, huge companies, massive companies are using and applying them to your work and applying them to your sales teams because it just works. So the broader impact of gamification, it's more than just a tool for engagement, although it is a very effective tool for engagement. But it does have the power to change behavior and drive results in a really meaningful way. And when you apply it strategically, it can improve learning, it can improve productivity, it can improve retention on your teams. And so there are so many uses, there's so many ways that gamification can help benefit. It helps drive a positive culture. But the real success lies in understanding the psychology of motivation and designing experiences that allow you to tap into both intrinsic and extrinsic factors. Because that is how you're going to be able to motivate your entire team. That's how you're going to be able to motivate everybody that is, socializers and achievers and explorers, the people that are usually left out of those gamification, standard competition styles that are really meant to just incentivize top performers, which quite frankly, they don't need. Killers don't need to be motivated. Top performers don't need to be motivated. They already are. That's why they're top performers. The goal of gamification, at least in the way that we think about it, in the way that we want our prospects and our customers to think about it, is that this isn't about getting more out of everybody. This is about tapping into the motivating factors for everyone on your team and being able to get the most engagement, the best performance that you possibly can across the board. We like to say that anybody can be a top performer because anybody can be a top performer. You have people on your team right now that can be top performers, that can be on the top of the leaderboard, but they're not because you're not tapping into what motivates them the most. Because not everybody is going to be intrinsically motivated to close that deal or to make that cold call, right? So when you apply gamification to your sales teams, it really does have the power to make your team more motivated and engaged and productive. And more importantly, create a culture where everyone is driven to achieve and to collaborate and to learn and to grow. And when it's done right, the results really do speak for themselves because you're going to get higher performance and you're going to get increased engagement and you're going to get more revenue, baby. So, as we've explored today, gamification isn't just about adding game elements to non gaming context. It's about tapping into the fundamental psychology of motivation. And by understanding what drives us and by strategically combining intrinsic and extrinsic motivators, gamification can create a powerful and engaging experience that drives real results for you and your team. So, With that being said, we're really excited to bring you this podcast series and to talk about all of the ways that gamification can help transform your sales team and turn those pain points into wins. Stay tuned. Please subscribe. We would love to have you here. New episodes are going to come out every 2 weeks. You can get them anywhere you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple, however you do it. You can also watch these recordings on YouTube. We will have them on the SalesScreen YouTube channel as well. But again, super excited for this, and I will see you in 2 weeks.